What is the biggest problem holding humanity back from our next scientific breakthrough? Story 1. The current way research science is structured. It's a low-paying job, long hours with little to no career prospects, and you are lucky if you have basic benefits like a pension. Problem is, it requires 10 plus years of study, which means your net value is severely diminished compared to everyone else. The smart people are smart enough to realize that they are being screwed over and simply stop the career path. Source: I was a research scientist, and this sentiment was common in all the labs I've worked in. I have also worked in various locations around the world. Story 2. The idea that the government is some group of others, as if the rest of people aren't just as much corrupt, backstabbing liars. I think that's what drives some people to become anarchists. The idea that the state will always become corrupt eventually. The government is just a bunch of people who have taken or been given authority. So if power corrupts, then any government is inherently corrupt. I'm certainly not an anarchist, but I get where they're coming from in that regard. I think the best way to solve that issue is for the people to be able to hold the government accountable, which is why the guillotine is becoming an increasingly popular symbol again in some circles. Story 3. Honestly, a world war. Hear me out. Despite how awful it is, it's the only time the world quickly innovates and puts all its resources into researching new tech. The pressure to stay on top is what drives creativity. World War I and World War II brought us incredible technology that we still use today, that wouldn't exist without the serious pressure to innovate. The same goes for space exploration. The reason why the US or any other country hasn't been rushing to explore space is simply because there's no serious motivation. 2. The US landed on the moon to beat Russia during the Cold War, and the only way they would do it again is if another country went back and kicked over the flag. Story 4. A lot of great answers here that I'd repeat in agreement, but I think honestly the biggest issue with humanity is our innate tendency toward tribalism and war. I mean, it's kind of a depressing answer because that crap is ingrained. It's not going away anytime soon, and I think it's going to be our downfall. Mind you, it hasn't stopped us from developing the sophisticated governments, countries, and societies we have today, and all that is incredible with the above in mind. But I see our ingrained behaviors holding us far back until destruction. Maybe not though, I certainly hope not. Story 5. Patents or intellectual property. Companies with connections to political activity control what's allowed in the economy. Big Corp file thousands of patents all the time, just to the drawer. When a new startup blasts, it's almost certain that they have some patent infringement on, and the corp can sue and drown your little company in court fees for years. That's why big corporations are becoming stronger and more influential all the time. On top of that, it is completely immoral that a company can block the production of life necessities, including medicines, just to boost their prices. So yes, liquidation of patents should be a priority to move the world forward, boost competition, lower prices, create jobs, fight poverty, support developing countries, etc. Knowledge should be a public domain, as it was for the majority of human history. Story 6. In my opinion, not getting power back from our governments. In the US, the government has crushed the American dream and overworks its people. We barely get 1 or 2 weeks off a year of PTO. Health insurance is ridiculous. Some people work hard and even have a 2-person income, but still struggle to get by. Getting taxed on every single little thing. Taxes on crypto is what's driving me crazy. So the money you already tax from my paychecks, and what I do with it, you're gonna tax it again? I just believe the government should be working for the people, not the people working for the government. Not to mention they pin the people against each other with a media agenda a lot. Story 7. Ourselves. Easily. Not one singular person is willing to admit their own true faults. We blame society and societal standards for our own shortcomings. Humanity cannot live as a whole and break barriers when we divide ourselves from even ourselves. Our own personal faults are what holds us back from any kind of breakthrough. We are not perfect creatures. If we could look at our own internal imperfections through someone else's eyes, then maybe we could actually understand each other. Humans are private beings. We never share 100% with anyone because we live in societal fear that it won't be tolerated, accepted, or condemned. There are exceptions to this, mainly one. Any kind of chimo is something humanity should never accept, and therein lies the problem you're talking about. There will always be a conflict. No matter how big or how minuscule, we as humans simply can't break anything because everyone has their own thought process and reasoning behind it. It's sad, but there really is no way past it without a singular mindset between everyone. Story 8, I'm going to talk about the way we fund science. It either comes from private capitalist institutions which only look for sustainable profit centers. For instance, mRNA vaccine tech was developed years ago, but languished in the back rooms of Pfizer until there was a worldwide pandemic, because that made developing a new vaccine suddenly profitable. If it had been developed and fleshed out before, we could have a vaccine in a few months. They actually made the COVID vaccine over the weekend, and the rest of the time was spent figuring out approval and manufacturing. The second way science is funded is by writing tedious proposals to granting bodies like the NRF. Research has shown the grant approval process has about the same success rate as just randomly choosing projects. It also incentivized some of our greatest minds to spend the majority of their time on creative writing projects rather than science, or they have to hire and spend resources on a team of people solely writing grant proposals. Story 9, capitalism or greed. Just look at how many treatments or innovations that could save lives or help resolve the climate crisis seem to vanish or become unusably expensive if the market isn't deemed profitable or will take away profit from something else, like oil or sugar. Everything from the stagnation of development for a malaria vaccine, finally being used after literal decades, to the years of dietary propaganda slamming fat when sugar was the real issue, to the whole and patenting the vaccines drama that happened during a literal pandemic. Also, I'm pretty sure some of those vaccines were ready sooner, but intentionally waited for the other companies to be ready before releasing so that people wouldn't stop using their brand of vaccine once newer ones were made. Story 10, selfishness. Society had been moving towards an everything is about me idealism. It's no longer about looking after others, showing empathy, or doing something that can contribute to society. It's all about what can be done to help yourself and move yourself forward. Who can you abuse to get what you want? Not to worry about others unless they directly affect you. Add onto the political, financial, and capitalist idealisms, and you've got a society that doesn't think for society, only for themselves, and it will turn into anarchy one day, with people hurting people more than we see today, just for their own selfish reasons. Story 11. A desperate attempt to not pay taxes no matter how badly they are needed. Generally speaking, governments break ground when there is significant financial risk, and then private companies come in after to improve on the situation when the major part of the risk has already been assumed by the government. For example, NASA got people to the moon, and a coalition of government-funded international space agencies built the International Space Station, ISS. Lives were lost and projects were failures, but they were all learning opportunities, and now we have private companies like SpaceX and others competing for their share of the market. Going to low Earth orbit like the ISS is basically driving around the block in space terms. I recall seeing an interview with Ted Cruz where the interviewer, Stephen Colbert, forced Ted to admit to his sheer stupidity on the subject of taxes. Stephen laid the foundation by talking about how Reagan, a conservative, said he would not raise taxes but then was elected and realized he had to raise taxes in order to make the country more fiscally sustainable. Same thing with George H.W. Bush. Both guys raised taxes when they realized they needed to. The question was posed to Ted: if you or another Republican were elected and you needed to raise taxes, would you do it? The answer, of course, was no, because Ted Cruz is a pandering, self-serving pile of trash who either lacks foresight or doesn't give a crap about the long term if it doesn't benefit him directly right now. Story 12. We need a true Occupy movement again. Everyone knows that America and most of the West is basically a bunch of oligarchies where the vast majority of the politicians are bought and paid for by members of the 1%. I'm talking about radical identification with each other as the 99%, to a degree where we agree that all debates, including big or small government, equality or equity, right wing or left wing, are secondary issues until the politics in America can be reformed. The only way a person could disagree with a movement like that is 1. Massive denial about the state of American democracy. 2. All-consuming hatred of their political adversaries. Or 3. Subscription to an ideology that is supported and funded by the 1%. Neoliberalism, party-line voters, establishment conservatism, bourgeois leftism, etc. Early Occupy was the only place in modern history you would see far left and far right militias standing side by side against the police in the streets. Unfortunately, such a movement is quickly diffused from the left with accusations of Strasserism, Nazbol, Tanky, and from the right with accusations of socialist or communist. Historically, the Occupy movement was completely defanged by bourgeois leftism. You'll see it in this comment too. It will be attacked by neoliberals and bourgeois leftists if it's seen. Story 13. Before, people with no culture nor brain would just go to the local pub to talk about their opinion and various conspiracy stories. Said stories were kept there. Smart people would do their thing without having to cope with it. Since social media rose, these people found out they were actually many and a force to be reckoned with. The result of that is politicians and democracies had to please them to be elected. The results are various laws and barriers being created on baseless stuff, ultimately preventing research and progress. Well, in democratic countries that consider people should keep their opinions to themselves do not have that problem, and they became world leaders. Not saying democracy is all bad and totalitarianism is the way to go. Just, there is a need for something in between. Story 14. Human beings are holding us back. AI is a lot further off than you think, not because of technology, but because of humans. This always turns into an argument for me, and it's frustrating. There is no way to get a self-driving truck from the port of Los Angeles, CA to New York City. Why? Because 2,000 years of recorded history tells us that if you don't put a human being in the truck, someone will steal everything in the truck, and probably then set it on fire for fun. Then you have the enemy, the hackers. It is 2021 and we can't keep an automated pipeline open. Imagine 40,000 self-driving trucks as potential targets for crypto lock. Human beings are holding us back. You'll know AI and complete automation are close when the investment switches from the cheap stuff, developing the software and hardware, to the expensive stuff, securing the payload. Story 15, I would say disinformation that serves an agenda. The government does it, the anti-government movements do it, so who am I to trust? How do I know that scientific research hasn't been bought? How do I know that a candidate will do what he promises and isn't only using us to get votes? How do I know that history is taught the way it was? It's always written by the victor anyway, and so on. It's hard to trust anyone with the amount of lies we hear every day. I mean, parents lie to their kids, and I don't mean Santa or a lie. They tell of things that kids are too young to understand. We lost our trust, and sometimes with good reason. Of course, then we have the opposite problem. People who trust no one and start reinventing the wheel all over again. So I would say that lack of honesty and trust as a consequence is what is really holding us back. We wouldn't need to be controlled by the government if they wouldn't try to lie to us in the first place. The same goes for religion. Story 16. The fact that science can be purchased now and opinion is argued as fact. There is now a massive industry around research for money where corporations can pay their scientists to deliver results that they want, and that is then cut down to small sound bites and played on the news as a means to disprove independent research into any one of the great issues afflicting the world. Think the oil industry paying their scientists to disprove the environmental and societal costs of their products, agricultural industry paying theirs to disprove the water shortages, negative effects of deforestation, or the fact that the oceans are being absolutely pillaged, or to say that agricultural subsidies are a good thing. Pharmaceutical companies research the crap out of their products for good reason, but also use it to shut out new starts. And then there's the fake ones like family research councils, which are just political associations trying to find their talking points correct with whatever bull crap so that they can have some influence on the political process. Story 17. What's holding us back most is ourselves. Until we learn to put our greed behind us, we are going to be stuck. My bio professor was telling me a story about a friend of hers who made a cheaper antibiotic that would help millions of people. But he actually gets paid to never sell it, because the antibiotics now are making people tons of money. Society now is so oriented toward being selfish and rich, we care about ourselves and no one else. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why one day the human race will cease to exist. Story 18. I don't want to sound like a douche, but maybe the lack of evolution by natural selection. In most Western countries, you'll survive no matter how inferior you are to your peers. And I guess this means that bad traits are also carried forward to the next generation, whether it's mental disabilities, genetic diseases, or physical handicaps. But it would be inhumane to not allow some people to have children, and I'm not advocating this at all. I just don't really see any way of our species evolving by natural selection, at least, which I think is a little sad. Have we reached our peak as a species? I hope I haven't offended anyone. These are just my thoughts. Story 19. We're really short-sighted. We don't really get delayed gratification. So we don't exercise and we eat crap food and smoke cigarettes and get unhealthy. We have loads of accidental babies. We go to school or college, but we don't want to study as hard as possible because we want to go online or watch TV or sleep or whatever. It's like that famous marshmallow experiment where kids were given a marshmallow, and if they waited 5 minutes before eating it, they could get 3 marshmallows or something like that. Most of them couldn't wait and ended up eating the marshmallow. Supposedly, they followed up the kids as they went through school, and those who waited for the 3 marshmallows were also the ones getting better grades. Story 20. Oil. There is the resource curse that slows growth for most of oil-producing countries. Apart from lower economic growth, there seems to be correlation between women's rights and oil production with various socioeconomic consequences, wars, which cost resources and human lives. Imagine the increase in welfare and the potential of economic, scientific, and technological progress stemming directly from the oil-producing countries, which consist of millions of people, and indirectly with an increase in the amount of people contributing to human knowledge. The probability of finding the cure for cancer is higher the more people are in the talent pool, from which universities recruit researchers, and the amount of resources available for that research. A woman from Saudi Arabia, for example, faces more obstacles to be in that talent pool, not to mention global warming, which will impede growth in the future. Story 21. Not having free access to the basic needs in life: water, food, and shelter. Why do we have such a large discrepancy between the amount of empty housing and the homeless population in the US? Humans, just for the sake of being human, should have access to, at the very minimum, these 3 essential needs. Imagine the amount of savings incurred by housing these people and giving them a chance to get off the streets, which could then be used to guarantee a certain amount of food and water to everyone. Also, I think copywriting of ideas and scientific discoveries is holding us back tremendously on the innovation front. Story 22. Fear and laziness, in that order. Humans' brains have developed the capacity for language and reasoning and abstract thought, but we are still very quick to allow our reptilian brain instincts to trump our higher cognitive decision-making abilities. Now, laziness isn't always a bad thing. If we can create a tool that allows us to survive with less work, we'll use that tool. But what happens when a tool is made that allows a few people to do no work and prosper, but requires most people to do a lot of work and barely cling to survival? History shows that these tools will be invented and accepted again and again, because the poor majority are somehow convinced that they too will benefit in the long term. Story 23. The polarization of modern politics. People identify and stick to parties, and they do so to quite vehement extremes. Those who want social change identify with liberal policymaking, yet fail to realize the harms that expensive social programs have on the economy, just as how those who want economic change identify with policymakers who want to stifle social progress and restrict the liberty of citizens. There's third parties like the Libertarian Party, which combine the social freedoms for citizens with the strong, empirically proven economic policies of the past. Yet so many individuals remain locked into the two-party system, fighting tooth and nail for policies that will never benefit everyone. Story 24. I see some great posts in here. Lots of pointing fingers at big conceptual groups, government, religion. What I think is that's holding us back. Our simple laziness and contentment with the status quo. On the whole, government policies don't change because they seem to have worked for the past 30 years. Things couldn't have changed that much. We need to do all this work of revising policies now, can it? Religions are comforting to those who are capable of being religious. Really, there's a whole group of us who simply aren't capable of being religious. Call it an anomaly if you must, but we simply don't understand and see no point in pretending. But abandoning comfort is difficult. Those who didn't have the comfort from early on might do a little better, but it's still a lot of work to try to answer tough questions. How many of us have chosen to learn just enough to find an okay career so that we can have a family and live out our days in relative peace? Story 25. The monetary system we have developed as a society. We've assigned a value to everything, and rather than be able to have access to the best materials or technology or education, we are stuck trying to scrounge up a few bucks to buy the week's food. As well as that is the concept of morals, ideology, etc. If we gave less craps about someone else's religion, or whether we identify as straight or something else from the alphabet society, and moved on with life as a collective community, we'd be decades ahead of where we are now. There are too many hindrances stemming from the idea that you, as an individual, are at all relevant in the immense expanse of the cosmos, and that your consumer worth determines how you rank amongst friends and colleagues. Story 26. In the United States, the US government is constantly putting science, space, and technology on the bottom of the list. I believe NASA gets something like 1% or even less of the total US budget, and yet we still get ignorant jerks railing for reduced funding for NASA. Some of the dumbest people in Congress are in the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. Watch the Daily Show episode on September 22nd, 2014, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. All because there's other things that are more pressing. Apparently, the government is so busy arguing about the past and how it should run the present that it doesn't think about the future. Story 27. I would start with resource mismanagement. Many rather useful and precious resources are being wasted in frivolous manners. Helium for balloons, diamonds, and gold for jewelry, rather than being used for more forward-putting technological purposes. I think as a race, if we begin to abandon that self-centered thinking of ownership of precious materials and save them for better uses, we might develop a more forward-thinking attitude. Money. Money is another concept that is holding human advancement back. Rather than reaching out to the stars, doing necessary research, we hold back technological, medical, and scientific research behind monetary needs. We equate the advances in technology to the funds needed to advance, and in some cases, cancel or put projects on hold for monetary reasons. I would funnel so much more money to NASA and space programs altogether if I could, but I am not the overlord of the world, unfortunately. Separating religious beliefs from the needs and morals of society as a whole. We have advanced socially where past beliefs are no longer considered moral or valued in society, yet we cling to them as religious beliefs. I have no problem with individual religious beliefs, but the moral ideals of the community should reign supreme outside your churches, synagogues, and mosques. Immoral, socially displaced beliefs should be left in their historical social contexts and not be used as the current basis for laws. We should base our laws on communal social beliefs. Story 28. Nobody tries to make the world better these days. Our greatest aspirations are to die happy. There isn't enough of that human ambition, that fire that we've always had. Nobody wants to step up and fix all the problems here. We just need to each do our little part, and it'll all work out. If you sort your recyclables, you don't have to feel guilty about the destruction of the environment. If you pay $1 a day to some charity, and you don't have to feel guilty about the horrors people face in undeveloped countries. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters to us. We complain that our government is all corrupt and dishonest, but nobody puts their name forward to be elected to replace all the terrible people in charge. We say corporations are going to destroy the world with their greed, but nobody starts up a company that does it differently. We need to do more than what we've been doing. Buy a smaller house and put your mortgage payments towards something that matters. Rise high and get the system moving in the right direction. We can't fix the world with convenient, bite-sized contributions. If it isn't challenging, you're not making a real difference. Story 29. The general acceptance of the divine right of kings. Historically, kings or equivalents were believed to have the right to rule bestowed upon them by God or equivalent. The general population therefore took it for granted that the king had the right to make the rules and that the people had the moral obligation to obey. Today, the nation-state and its governmental apparatus has replaced the king and his minions, but the people still believe that they have a moral obligation to kneel before their rulers. This divine right of kings fairy tale is carefully maintained and cultivated by our rulers, lest we see the truth, that the emperor has no clothes. That is, that political authority is a hypnotic trance in the minds of the common people and nothing more. Story 30. Just another theory, but I think gender inequality is a big one. Are girls just not as good at math and science, or are most led away from their curiosity of the natural world by societal expectations? It's been less than 100 years since women have begun going to college, and only about 200 years since the discussion about gender equality began taking place. So if diversity really helps humans advance, disenfranchised groups should hold unique perspectives and should be looked at as an asset to help increase the pool of knowledge of humankind. Women are more than half the world's population, so oppressing them by not allowing them access to education or steering them to more gender-appropriate fields of study, I believe holds us back from advancement. Story 31. Envy. Some would say religion, some would say greed, some would say selfishness, others might say pride or ego. In the end, though, it all boils down to the same thing: envy. The religious want everyone to suffer under their delusion. Technological advancements disprove their mythologies, which hurts confidence in them having the truth. The result is apologists who attempt to reconcile fact with their fiction. Oh, Genesis speaks of dinosaurs and stromatolites and the earth is a sphere. You know the type of crap I'm talking about. For the most part, I can accept that, if it helps you sleep at night to add revisionary meaning to whatever book you're using. That's cool. What I find unconscionable, though, is attempts to make claims like carbon dating is unreliable, or science can't answer why fresh lava carbon dates at millions of years old when it's only months old. Their inability to comprehend the reason does not mean that there isn't a reason, but these people go on to insist that this be taught as scientific fact in classrooms. In countless other topics, deities and science might be the most popular of the bullcrap they shovel in schools, but it is far from the only topic. How is this envy? If someone else is right, it makes them wrong, and in their quest to be right, their only option is to silence the opposition. Story 32. The current meta-paradigm of science. All our scientific paradigms are based on the assumption that the physical world is the real world, and that space, time, matter, and energy are the fundamental components of reality. When we fully understand the functioning of the physical world, we will, it is believed, be able to explain everything in the cosmos. This is the belief upon which all our various scientific paradigms are based. It is, therefore, more than just another paradigm. It is a meta-paradigm, the paradigm behind the paradigms. So successful has this meta-paradigm been at explaining just about every phenomenon we encounter in the material world. It is seldom, if ever, questioned. It is only when we turn to the non-material world of the mind that this worldview begins to exhibit weaknesses. Nothing in Western science predicts that any living creature should be conscious. Yet one thing we know for sure is that we are experiencing beings. For the materialist meta-paradigm, consciousness is one big anomaly. Story 33, Ethics. If we could start cutting up the brains of live people, we'd have a much better understanding of how brains work. The same applies to GMOs, GMing of animals, especially humans, a crap ton of medical research, social progress and experimentation, etc. There may well be methods of increasing human lifespan and intelligence and reshaping societies, brave new world style, we will never discover because of this. Unless someone finds a big hole in the current laws of physics, the only way anything human will be leaving the solar system for a start. It's also preventing progress on mental health issues and dementia, Parkinson's, etc. These are the major growth diseases of our comfortable Western lives. Story 34, Morals. While a majority or just a significant amount of the population sees something immoral, then there will always be debate on whether it should be studied or explored, much like the stem cell issues. I believe there are many ideas and products that could make humans smarter, stronger, healthier, etc., but it's impossible to get approved for human trials. My father works in the biomedical field, and he always says that aspirin is one of the greatest inventions in the medical field, and if it were to be discovered in today's world, it would never make it to human trials because it kills mice. Story 35, The status quo is. The global political dynamic has stagnated in the last while, and we need a major shakeup to kick us in the nuts so we can get off our butts, stop being complacent, and realize that, for better or worse, we as a race seem to thrive in conflict. The way I see it is we as a race will end up going one of three ways. We continue on as we are and stagnate into a cultural monopoly, continue the cycle of temporary societal stagnation, ending with a jump forward, caused by a large conflict changing the status quo, or we fall too deep into conflict and kill each other,